West Midlands in the United Kingdom, and I'm speaking to you on the 4th of May 2020. As I'm speaking to you, it feels very much that there's a perception abroad across Europe that we've turned the corner with death rates and infection rates and COVID-19, and that has to be welcome. There are a couple of things that occur to me. One is at a human level, with people who have been confined to their houses, in some cases for 8 weeks now. What are the psychological implications of them leaving a place of security and safety and technically exposing themselves to the possibility of infection from COVID-19? What sort of fears and reluctance does that nurture? The other one is about the sort of workplace culture that we've had a gap from. And in that gap, I've seen a number of articles, read a number of articles that suggest that there might be a new and different way of doing things. We should be looking at a new and different way of doing things. How do we do that? I wonder, are we at a place now where we need to, at the centre of organisations, whether they are public, private, community, charitable, whether at the centre of organisations we place the notion that it's our purpose to serve. And that really does rejig some of the thinking, particularly in the private sector. If we were to do that, is there a framework we can begin to discuss that opens some thought avenues for us to explore? My view is there is, and it's been expressed through servant leadership. And the rest of this presentation is going to take you through how we might be able to construct a few reference points or some scaffolding around which to build a different leadership culture. It's going to be delivered in a couple of parts, and we'll begin with the introductory section now. And in that section, I'm going to pose a few questions and see if we can come up with a means of beginning to formulate some answers using the framework of servant leadership. Thank you. As we enter the conversation about how servant leadership could help us reset post-COVID-19, we need to think about how do we move our thoughts into actions. And I'm going to make an assumption here that we're actually working alongside people in leadership roles in organisations, whether they're private, public, charitable, community. I'm going to assume that they have got at least an interest and possibly a commitment towards making that journey. I'm not for a second suggesting that any one person in the organisation should be in charge of listening. What I'm proposing is that leadership teams need to develop a listening culture. And if we're able to do that, how then can we answer those 3 bullets that we demonstrate that we've to others, that they have been listened to and that they've been heard? How can we show people that this is the way we've reached our decision, and here's how we're going to communicate it to you? And what are the things that we decide, we've just got to go ahead with that, and this one we need to defer it, we need to think about it and bring it into a conversational cycle. I want to refer to the good intentions of others. That's going to assume that they've largely bought into the values, the ethics and behaviours that we're trying to promote within an organisation. But it's a very practical acceptance that nobody gets it right all of the time. So how do we deal with that? How do we address the behaviour or the performance, but nonetheless understand that the person who has done that, who may have just made an error, can we assume that they're actually on board with us with our general overarching philosophy? What I think I'm saying here is everybody's got the right to have a bad day. But if it is that we are challenging the performance, or we're saying that behaviour is not suitable, that's not where we're at and you know it, how do we actually do that but keep our own filters in place so that we acknowledge that we're still dealing with somebody who we want to have on board and with us. I believe we're not going to achieve any of this unless we're actually in a place where we can communicate to others that our purpose is about ethical wholeness. It's about doing the right thing and lots of it, and having conversations about other right things to do and doing that and trying it. What we're reaching into is the power of possibility. And we're going beyond traditional expertise here. We're stretching out, we're reaching out to invite knowledge, experience as part of our capacity as human beings to find out what it is that we can do better. One of the challenges I feel for an organisation is to step beyond the bureaucracy, to step beyond the rules, and in so doing, as we are following our direction of travel, we're not navigated by a rule book. We're making our journey by enlisting others to join us with our ethical purpose, our ethical persuasion, then becomes the reason to be here, the reason to do what it is we're setting out to do. I guess what I'm looking at here is how do we create a place where we have our formal events, we have our meetings, we have our briefings, we have our creative sessions, but how do we create something beyond that where it's all right to come up with ideas, it's fine, it's actually what we're looking for. Now I know that there has to be a balance between that and doing the job that we're actually purposed to do. I absolutely get that, but I believe that you can have it both ways. And I think of the cost of not doing it, where we have maybe people turning up to work on a day-by-day basis and thinking, but actually, nothing I say here matters. I'm here to do things, not to contribute things. That's one of the important balances I think we need to shift, so that yes, you are here to do things. We're all here to do things, but we're also all here to contribute things. Are there some lessons, our past stories? How well do we tap into people's past stories, our own past stories? Do you agree with my past story? Do we see things the same on this one? What do we learn from that? And how do we take that learning and say, this is how it matters now, this is how it's informing where we are and how we got here and what we need to be doing next? It feels hugely important to me, particularly at this time where the focus is so sharp, that the first bullet is given active consideration. What is the meaningfulness of our decisions taken today? What are the risks? What are the jeopardies? What are the benefits for our future generations? If we are committed to the growth of people, how do we evidence that? And how do we learn from our commitment to the growth of people? When we grow our people, what do they teach us? What do they teach our organisation? And how do we sort of capture that? How do we help you? How do we get that information to help us to tell a very powerful story about our purpose, who we are, and why we are? That brings us on to another interesting question. We are stewards of what we do, and our organisation will have a purpose beyond us. It will have the purpose of the activities that we can see, and there will also be the purpose of the activities that we cannot see, the shadow we cast. If we move away from that concept of ownership to stewardship, it changes the thought processes, the language that we use to articulate how we relate to ourselves and the wider community. Have we got a really clear idea about what good it is we are supposed to do? We've talked about a shift in values, a shift in attitudes, a shift in the purpose of organisations. And I'm going to talk about how perhaps the notion that we are simply here to make money for investors is not adequate to carry us forward to do the job that needs to be done. But how do we ensure that we are in tune with the needs of the greater society and that our activities, our actions will be to the benefit of that society?